Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm Abby McGee, and I'm so glad you're here today. There are some conversations we avoid, not because they aren't important, but because they feel really uncomfortable. And this is one of them. Today, we're going to talk about how to set up your business to protect yourself in the event of divorce. And before anyone tenses up or thinks, well, that's not my situation, or I don't want to put that energy out there, I want to say this really clearly. This episode is not about assuming your marriage will fail. It's not about being pessimistic, and it's definitely not about planning for the worst. It's about being informed. It's about protecting what you've built. My guest is LeeAnne Quattrucci, a divorce attorney who works with people at one of the most emotionally and financially vulnerable moments of their lives. She sees every single day what happens when business owners plan ahead and what happens when they don't. So if this topic makes you uncomfortable, stay with me. If you've ever wondered how marriage and business actually intersect legally, this episode is for you. And if you're building something meaningful and want to protect it, not just for yourself, but for your future, this conversation matters. So let's get into it. You're listening to Business from Scratch, the podcast for people building businesses they love without losing themselves along the way. I'm your host, Abby McGee. Let's get started. LeeAnne, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
You are a family law attorney in Wilmington. How long have you been practicing here?
I've been practicing 18 years in
Okay.
Wilmington. Yes. So almost 2 decades.
So long enough to know a lot of stories, lots of.
So many stories. Many I can't share,
Oh,
but so many.
I won't be asking you any particulars, but I brought you here specifically today to talk about how divorce affects business.
hmm
This is a topic that is important to me. I just went through this in my own life, and it was one of the scariest things I've ever been through.
hmm
You're already going through the emotions that ending a relationship brings.
Absolutely.
And then when you add in the complications of what this means for your business, it's terrifying.
Absolutely.
And I think it's something that a lot of people don't even know that they need to think about. I have mentioned to several people that I was going to have this as a topic, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've never even thought about needing to even think about it."
The majority of people
Hmm.
don't think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about it and kind of help people understand how they can protect themselves, what they need to do now if they've done nothing so
hmm
far. But can you talk a little bit about when you find people in your office who are going through a divorce and they are business owners, what's the most common surprise that they face when they realize, oh shit?
Yeah. So the most common surprise that I have when people own businesses is the fact that the business is usually a marital asset.
Hmm.
And if I may, in North Carolina specifically, there are basically three types of property: separate property, marital property, and mixed property.
Hmm.
And separate property is anything you owned before you got married. So if
Hmm.
you had a car before you got married, that's your car. Marital property is everything, and I mean everything, that
Hmm.
you have once you get married. And so if you have a business and that business is growing, right? And either you started it during the marriage or the business continues to grow, that business has a value. And
Hmm.
that value is attributable to both spouses, even if one spouse is the only one doing the work.
Hmm.
So that's the biggest shock. The biggest
Hmm.
shock is just a very basic law fact that people don't think about. Because, of
Hmm.
course, when we get married, we don't think we're going to get divorced,
Right.
right? And so people don't think about those things.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost taboo to think about it.
Yeah,
Like you're
absolutely.
jinxing yourself if you have that conversation.
Yeah.
So to clarify, if you started a business before you got married
Right.
and then you got married,
Right.
whatever growth the business sees
Can
after the marriage is marital
can be
property.
marital property. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a scary thing.
That is scary.
It is.
So I think the biggest revelation to me is that if you don't have a plan in place that is an agreement between you and your spouse,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean there's not a plan. The government makes your plan
Oh,
for
yeah,
you.
absolutely. Like they always will if you
Yes.
don't. Yeah.
So you can either leave that future uncertainty up to a judge,
Mhm.
or you can plan now. And, I there's such a taboo around it, and I grew up in a house that divorce was a bad word.
Mhm.
You don't even speak the word, like, you
Right.
just.
I was raised Catholic, so I
Yeah.
understand.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so anything that you do to plan for the possibility of a failure in a relationship
Mhm.
is you don't do that, right?
Mhm.
And so then I grew up and like learned about the world and found myself in a position that I wish that I had taken care of some things and made a plan.
Mhm.
So we do things like take out insurance policies and have contracts, business contracts,
Mhm.
and all of these things that we put legal protections in place and protections in place for when something bad happens. But that doesn't mean you're planning for something bad to happen. It just means you're
Prepare.
protecting yourself.
Mhm.
So let's talk about how we can legally
Yeah.
protect
Sure.
ourselves. Um,
So the biggest thing, Abby, too, that people don't, and again, it goes into what you're saying about the taboo.
mhm,
Like we have prenuptial agreements, and
mhm,
that's an agreement that's made before people even get married. And I
mhm,
know folks don't like to think about that, but our national divorce rate, the last time I checked a couple weeks ago, is 64%. So that means
mhm,
64% of marriages across the country end in
mhm,
separation or divorce. And
mhm,
sometimes that's not bad, right?
mhm,
Like sometimes it's amicable, both parties decide that. It goes a lot of different ways. But
mhm,
probably with those statistics and the way the world works, it's probably a good idea
mhm,
if you're not married yet to think about doing something like that before you
mhm,
get married, particularly if you have a business interest or you're going to start a business or you have a business,
mhm.
because that nips it in the bud and then you don't have to deal with that conversation later.
Right.
And you don't have to do stuff taking care of it later.
Right, you don't have to have the conversation when things are heated and precarious for
Right.
many other
Right.
reasons, and a prenup doesn't necessarily have to be something where you're like, "Well, this is mine and that's yours."
No, it does not. It's a
It's really
contract.
it's a contract, it's a understanding between the 2 of you about what's right, what's just, what's fair,
Correct.
and that takes the conversation out of that moment that is just already so elevated.
Absolutely. And in a way, you're starting. I got married very young, so I don't have a prenup, and
Mhm,
but you're starting the relationship off with understandings, right? And
mhm,
then you're not setting yourself up for bad expectations later or disagreements later.
mhm,
Particularly if you are a business person or have a business or even like have an idea that in the future it's something you might want to do.
mhm,
um, it's just easier to deal with before you get into it,
mhm,
right? Because as you've experienced, unfortunately, like separation and divorce is very emotional. They compare
mhm,
it emotionally to a death. And so just dealing with the emotions of a
mhm.
separation is enough for like a full-time job.
Right.
And then dealing with like all of the semantics and financials and property
Mhm.
division and if you have kids and child is overwhelming.
It is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrifying. So I think that it's so helpful for people to figure out a way to have a human adult conversation with their partner that says, "Hey, we're not going to plan for failure. However, let's let's put some." It's like business hygiene almost. It's like let's make sure everything is clean and
Mhm.
understandable, and so there's not a fear attached to. I think about where I was when I knew the direction my marriage was heading, and I knew the direction that, where I was finding myself, and the fear about what that meant for my businesses and my staff and all of
Mm.
that
Yeah,
was it weighed so heavily into you not even be able to make a good informed decision because there's already that fear
absolutely.
looming.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. Emotions and everything. It just
Mhm.
sometimes clap. I love what you said though, the hygiene of business. I like that. I
Yeah.
would think of the legal and logistics of setting up a business as
Mhm.
sort of a cleanup hygiene
Yeah.
scenario for, yeah, I love that.
It takes the uncertainty and the you know, you can look at that in your books in your contracts with your clients.
Yep.
This is a contract that could heavily affect
Mhm.
you in the future.
Absolutely.
Do you have advice for people on how to bring this up with their partner if they don't have
Prior
any?
to getting married or after,
Mhm.
like
Let's start with
post-nuptial?
prior. Like if you're in a relationship and starting a business, how do you bring that up
So
without
you're
being?
already married and you're in a relationship and you're
Mhm.
starting a business?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that that can be brought up gently in the formation of the business because, as you know, there are different ways to form your business entity
Mhm.
wise: LLC, PC, PA, corporation, S
Mm.
Corp, all kinds of
Mhm.
things. And I think the conversation can start there
Mhm.
because there are liability issues for each of those entities. And I think talking to your spouse about what this would entail, the
Mhm.
benefits of a business and the negatives of a business, and how
Mhm.
it can impact and bleed into your personal financials
Mhm.
and not just the business. That's probably
Mhm.
a conversation. Um, you know, I think in many ways, to me, the key factor in any marriage or relationship, the number one factor as to whether it sustains, whether it's healthy, is communication
Mhm.
and being able to communicate with your partner
Mhm.
effectively. I think even things like that can show you how you're able to communicate with your partner and if it's going to be a successful relationship. When you talk about,
Mhm.
money is one of those things that triggers people. It just does. I've been
Mhm.
doing it a long time, um, and people can be amicable, and as soon as money is discussed, it triggers people. So I
Mhm.
think the more conversations and the more communication you could have at the beginning of a relationship or at the beginning of starting a business, the
Mhm.
better it's gonna be.
Mhm.
Because if you deal with the issues when you're starting the business, you won't have to deal with them once you're already involved in the business and
Mhm.
running the business
Mhm.
and then determining how we're gonna value the business, which
Mhm.
you may have found out is a whole nother process as well.
Mhm.
Um, so I think, you know, I tell people I'm a big believer in honesty and big communication in our relationships. Honesty, I say to my husband all the time, honesty when it hurts.
Mhm.
I think people are willing to be honest, but not in times when it is uncomfortable or it hurts.
Right.
And I think that's the most important time to be
For sure.
honest. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you can't have those honest conversations with your partner who is supposed to be the the most important person in your life, then
Hmm.
that says a lot about
I
the
think
strength
so.
of your relationship. Is there a difference in how you form your business, whether it's an LLC, an S corp, all the different legal categories of
Hmm.
business? Is Does that make a difference in how it's viewed in a divorce?
It can make a difference. One of the things that's important to note is in North Carolina specifically, right? Other states are different, but in North Carolina and a lot of the southern states, like title is not indicative. So what that
Hmm.
means is like if the business is in my business, the law
Hmm.
offices of LeeAnne Quattrucci is my business. It's in my name. My husband doesn't have any ownership on title of that
Hmm.
business, including how I established the business, the building that I have for my business, anything. There's no title there. And that doesn't mean for sure that if you don't have your name on something, for example, if you buy a car during marriage, but your name is not on the title, only one person is, that's not dispositive as to what's marital.
Hmm.
But in a business, that can be used as evidence as to what was intended to be. So
Hmm.
if you are starting a business and you do not want your spouse or partner to have any ownership interest therein, you definitely do not want any title issues, meaning you don't want to put them on anything. You don't want to put
Hmm.
them on the incorporation of the business. You don't want to put them on the taxes of the business. You don't want to list them. I've seen spouses list their spouse is like a person on the board with filing. They've never had
Hmm.
nothing, anything to do
Hmm.
with the business, but they're
Hmm.
somehow on there. And there are reasons people do that financially too. Some people pay their spouses through the business when they
Hmm.
shouldn't. I mean, there's
Hmm.
so many issues, Abby. I
Yeah.
don't know. I
Yeah.
don't want to go too far, but
Oh no, let's go
I
far.
mean, it- first rule I would say is do not have your spouse's name affiliated with anything to do with the business.
Hmm.
If you want to keep it clean, you don't want to give the courts, if the courts are the one that are going to determine, any reason to say, okay, well, there was some intent for
Hmm.
this to be commingled or marital.
Hmm.
Do you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Hmm.
So that's a big one. In terms of forming the business, I think that the most important thing about how you run your business is really from a tax perspective. And
Hmm.
so I
Right.
generally tell folks to consult their tax
Hmm.
professional and do it what's best financially from a
Hmm.
tax perspective, because all those different organizations, LLC, PA, really are about liability and
Mhm.
taxes. And
Mhm.
so, again, the only thing I would say with that is your business, you're doing it, spouse's name should have nothing to
Right.
do with that, including separate filings, which is
Yeah.
you would think most people do, but they don't.
Separate tax filing. So instead of filing jointly, you should file separately your
Uh,
personal taxes too?
I would if you're conducting a business. And
Okay.
again, that would be
That's good
something that I'd
advice.
talk to a tax professional about, but I recommend that generally. So
Mhm.
you can always file married filing separately, especially if the business ownership is to one person. Some people choose not to do that. At the very least, you want to file personal taxes as you're married and then your separate taxes as a business.
Mhm.
You'll be surprised how many people try to do their taxes, one set of taxes and
Mhm.
everything
Yeah,
in there.
that's wild. So in the same vein, like making sure that your personal finances and your business finances aren't all mixed up.
Right. That's
Have separate
commingling.
right, commingling, have a separate bank account.
Mhm.
Don't put your personal money into your business if you can avoid it, all of that, because
Mhm.
that is then
Commingled.
commingling can be
Mhm.
used in the court to
Say marital property.
mhm,
Yeah. And it's that is so many topics that we can go off on, but commingling is such a big issue too because people don't
mhm.
understand what that means. So for example, and stop me at any point.
No,
But
you're good.
okay, so I have my business and I can write my car off through
Mhm,
my business because I use my car for traveling back and forth to court and
mhm,
appointments and things like that. So I do that through the business,
mhm.
not through my personal, right? You have people that run everything through their business, not only their car, their spouse's car, right? Other things that they
Mm,
can,
mhm.
which may be permissible for tax law because everybody wants to get the best tax breaks they
Right.
can. I mean, I do too.
Mhm.
But the problem comes that if there is an issue later down the road, what has happened is you've commingled assets, right? Because now all of a sudden somebody's wants a portion of the business or expects support,
Mhm.
alimony or PSS because the business of the spouse was paying certain expenses. Am I
Mm.
making
Oh,
sense?
yes.
Because stop me if I don't, because
No, that makes
sometimes,
sense. So, like, if you're paying your family's cell phone bill
right.
through the business or the gas bill or the car insurance
Yeah.
bill,
Yeah.
like everyday expenses that you run through your business because you can get away with it
Tax wise. Yeah.
tax
It's not
wise. Yes.
necessarily illegal. I'm not
Right.
saying, I mean, some people do take advantage of the tax code. I'm not saying that these are
Mhm.
illegal things.
Right.
I'm just saying you have to think about the implications of what that means in the future.
Mhm. I mean, I think business owners need to clean up their finances anyway, me included,
Period.
right? You need to
Yeah.
clean it up so that I mean, for a lot of reasons, not just about like what is that going to mean in case your marriage
Mhm.
ends,
Mhm.
but if you want to sell your business down the road, if
Mhm.
you want to bring on an investor, any
Mhm.
of those things get infinitely more difficult if you haven't cleaned up your books and you've
Mhm.
got all kinds of things. And I have been guilty of it for
We
sure.
all
Like
are.
you just,
Yeah. I mean, I'm
you
a
know,
lawyer, so I have to be more like cleaned up about
uh
it.
huh.
But what people don't what is frustrating for me, and I always encourage people to, follow their dreams and open businesses and start something fresh, a new project. But at the same time, like people need to understand that a business is a labor of love and work, right? Because if I could practice law every day, all day, and not worry about everything else of the business of practicing law,
Mm-hmm.
the stress level I have would be probably half.
Yeah.
Okay. Because running a business is a freaking job in and of itself,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Um, and cleaning it up from the beginning, starting off fresh, always helps later. I can tell you, as you mentioned, my primary practice is family law specialization. So the majority of my work is probably about 50%, 60 maybe, divorces.
mhm,
A lot of business owners, and I could list on my hand, probably less than my hand, the amount of cases where I've seen businesses that were easy for me to deal with in a
mhm.
divorce. Okay. I
Yeah.
have 4 right now that are waiting, 2 have gotten business evaluations, which is a whole nother process because, of course, spouse thinks the business is worth $1,000,000 and the other
Uh-huh,
spouse is like, "No, you think it is, but it's really 200,000 because of all
uh-huh.
these debts and
Right.
expenses," and so you get a professional that comes in and does what's called a business evaluation, give
Mhm,
you an objective number for the court to look at. I mean, right now I have several of those cases, which
mhm.
really, like, a lot of that background work could have been done when the business was started.
Yeah, and just keep it clean
Right.
so that you have
Mhm.
correct data in whatever scenario. Again, it's not just about divorce. It's about like setting yourself up for success in all kinds of different areas. And
Sure.
when you get sloppy in your business,
Mhm.
it's dangerous down the road for a multitude of reasons,
Yeah, lots
for
of reasons.
sure.
We saw a lot of businesses close after the pandemic, not
Mhm.
because of the pandemic, because of the PPP loans that people were taking out,
Uh-huh.
trying to survive, of course, but then not accounting for the way you need to account for money being spent or coming in under loans,
Mhm.
tax issues, things like that. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that are not just divorce with the business. Like I said, I think the business part is my least favorite part of what I do.
Oh, for
I
sure.
mean, I could never ever work for somebody else again because I've been working for myself for 15 years,
Uh-huh.
so I'm not saying that I wouldn't
Mhm.
do it, but I mean, I don't think people realize
Yeah.
generally, unless they run a business,
Yeah.
how much work. It's like having another kid.
It is. Well, a few kids. Depending on the kid.
Yeah.
It's very
Not my
complicated.
easiest kid, that's for sure.
No, for sure. My both of my kids are so easy, and I feel like my business is, like, infinitely more complicated,
That's what
and being a
happened.
mom
Yeah.
is
God knew you couldn't handle that.
mhm.
Had easy kids because the business was your hard
For
kid.
sure,
Yeah.
for sure. But here we are. That's a good business owner and a good entrepreneur, like, can handle it. It's hard,
Yeah.
but we kinda thrive on it,
Yeah.
on the
And I wouldn't
chaos.
change it because I
Yeah,
can't work for anybody
for
else.
sure. I say the same
Like
thing.
once I have worked for lots of people over the
Uh-huh.
years and different careers and jobs, but
Yeah.
never again.
Yeah, I mean, I had a boss, my whole life until I was mid-30s was when I went into business for myself, and I will never go back.
Hmm.
Never go
Hmm.
back. I don't think I could. I'd
I
I
couldn't.
I have seen the light.
Yes.
I have
Enlightenment.
uh-huh. Do you have any advice about how to structure an operating agreement? Um, and this comes into play more when you have a partnership in business. So one of my businesses, I am the sole owner. I have
Hmm.
another business that I have a 50-50 partner.
Hmm.
How does marriage play into how you should plan for that? So if I have a business partner and I get divorced, what does that mean for my business partner in that business?
Yeah, so that's a good question and a little bit complicated. Definitely, you need an operating agreement when you have any partnership.
Mhm.
I also suggest when people do consult with me prior to starting their businesses, if they're going to have partners, I suggest that there's a contract that's entered
Mhm.
on top of everything, not just for the contracts of the business partnership, contracts where the spouse understands that either they are invested in this or they divested of any interest therein. Because you can do that. I mean, you can contract for almost anything legal in
Mhm.
North Carolina.
Mhm.
And I do recommend folks do that, which is not required by
Mhm.
law, but contract terms dictate later down the line. And what that does is that gives clarity between the third, in my mind, the third party, the partner,
Mhm.
and the spouse. So later it doesn't become an issue. Do you see what
Mhm.
I'm saying?
So if you don't have that in the agreement and you get divorced, your spouse can claim.
Well, they would only still be able to go after your portion of the
Correct.
business, but it outlines the understanding from the very beginning that the
Mhm.
partnership is between you and that partner, and the
Mhm.
only expectation is that the
Mhm.
benefit is between those people and not the
Mhm.
spouse.
Mhm.
Am I making sense?
Yes. So
Mhm.
that's a business contract. That's not a prenup or a postnup. That's
Correct,
a
that's a
business contract.
contract,
Mhm.
and that's not an op so operating agreements, we, are pretty generally required or best
Mhm.
practices for any
Mhm.
partnership, and the operating agreement, as you know, just outlines all the requirements of the business, sort of sets out all the terms, terminology, and the expectations of both partner.
Mhm.
That's really more about, the partnership
Mhm.
and resolving any issues therein. Nobody ever really in the operating agreement, nobody thinks about, like, the
Mhm.
spouse.
Mhm.
So that's why we recommend you do an additional contract
Mhm.
to sort of keep that understanding as well. And you can in North Carolina also do postnuptials.
Right. That's on my list to
I'm
ask you
sorry.
about. So if you no, no, I love it. So if you don't have anything in place, there's still remedies for you
Correct.
to
Do a postnuptial,
mhm.
especially if you start a business during the
Mhm.
marriage. So you've
Mhm.
been married 3 years, you were doing jobs, one of the spouses decides they're going to open a business. That's a great time to go consult a family law attorney on a post nuptial agreement. And I'll just be candid because, I don't like AI, but it's inevitable. But I think people can do a lot with AI now,
Mhm.
including agreements like post nuptials and prenuptials. And I say that for eliminating costs. What I would suggest if you did something like that is that you would take whatever you created with AI and at least
Mhm.
consult an attorney to make sure that there are certain things in there because AI doesn't always specify the state.
Right.
And, there are different like tax laws and things in like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut with businesses that we don't have here.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think the AI of the world is certainly going to make it easier for people to structure businesses in
Mhm.
a good way. Whether they do or don't, we'll see. But I
Yeah.
think more resources are there than ever. Certainly
Yeah.
before when I started my business or you started your
Mhm.
business, the last year, 2 years, and continuing now is going to
Mhm.
be pretty much possible to do most of the
Most of it.
logistics. Yeah.
Well, and it's when you're first starting out and you're a
Right.
new business owner, a lot of people don't take care of these things because it is expensive to do.
Mm hmm.
So if you can use a tool like that,
Mm hmm.
but then get it looked at,
Yeah.
that cuts down on the
Yeah.
cost at least, and you're having somebody
Yeah.
review it. Um, I used AI one time to interpret a real estate contract or a lease agreement addendum kind of
Okay.
scenario.
Mhm.
And, I put it in there and AI was like, "Do not sign this. Here's all the things in red."
Mhm.
And it gave me, like, communication to send back to their
Mhm.
attorney, and the attorney was like, "I know you're using AI." I was like, "Yeah, for sure I am.
Nothing legal about that.
Yeah, I for sure I am, and I
Mhm.
need you to answer these things before I sign
Good for
this."
you, good for you. Yeah, a lot of attorneys don't like that I'm very vocal about it. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm living by the grace of God like everyone else in my
Mhm.
opinion, but my business is all word of mouth. I don't advertise. I just do my work and do the best I can and hopefully that energy will always come back to me. So I
Mhm.
don't think about like, oh, I'm losing business or oh, anything. I remember like not being able to afford groceries when we
Yes.
first started. Like I remember not knowing what I was doing. I remember
Mhm.
learning how to, do QuickBooks and all the things.
Mhm.
And so I try to think if there are tools that can make it easier for folks, then they should use them. I
Right.
think the difference is you go to the professional to just double check, to
Yes.
cross the T's and dot the
Yes,
I's,
which
and
is
you
what I
save
do.
yourself
Yeah.
a bunch of
Mhm.
money that
Mhm.
way. And as a lawyer, it doesn't make me mad when somebody comes in with, I'm very blatant, like, oh, did you use AI for this? Yes. Okay, well, this part's good. This part needs to change. Here's what needs to
Mhm.
happen. Like, it's the future.
Yeah.
People can fight it if they want, but
Mhm.
it's not going anywhere. So
No, it's a good tool if you use it the right way, I
yeah,
think.
absolutely.
And I've been grateful for it in times when I didn't have the money to hire somebody to do that for me.
Was it successful when you used it for the
Yes.
see?
Yes, it was.
There you go.
Mhm. Yes, it was. It was
Tried and true.
yeah, and it was a huge help. So yeah, if you can and I what I've learned about it is that you have to give it as much information as you can, be very
Mm-hmm.
specific about
Mm-hmm.
all where you are.
Mm-hmm. Which people
Um,
are worried about, but
mhm.
that's happening anyway every time you use your phone and the
I
internet,
know.
let's just be honest.
I know.
Mm.
Yeah, I asked somebody the other day, I wonder if your AI history can be used in a court of law against you if you were to ever find yourself in
So
the
that's a fascinating question
Uh-huh.
actually because it does not have a legal answer yet, but we
Mm,
are seeing that. Much the same way when I started practicing a long time ago now, we didn't use much internet stuff in like custody
history.
trials, but
Mhm.
now like you can't go to a custody trial or even a divorce trial without somebody's Facebook posts or Messenger,
Mhm.
which also tip, not my topic, but everything on the internet once it's there we can get it. So
Yes,
your text messages, you can delete them,
but you
but we
can
can
still
get
get
them.
it.
Your messages on Facebook, you can delete them.
Yeah.
We can still get them. Like, once you put something which I tell my kids this all the time, they're probably sick of me, but, like, once you put something out there into
Mhm.
the universe of the internet and the web, you
It's
have put it there
permanently.
forever.
Yeah.
forever and ever.
Mhm.
Now, maybe people can't just find it if they don't know what they're doing, or maybe you might have to get a subpoena or something like that to get it, but
Mhm.
it's there.
Mhm.
So I'm
Doesn't
sure
disappear.
that will be a legal issue eventually.
I bet, and, I know some of my friends use their chat as a therapist,
Chat
and
GTP, is
oh,
that what
yeah,
the GTP?
yeah, they
Yeah.
use it as a therapist, and, like, you're putting everything about yourself out there into
Yeah.
the world, and
Yeah.
anyway, it's
It
scary.
is scary. But
It's
there are
helpful, but also
for your
scary.
friends that use it for there are platforms though, like AI platforms for therapy. They should use the specific ones because if you're using like chat,
Mm.
the big thing with the chat GTP is the free one that anyone can use. When
Mhm.
you people don't ever look at anything when they read or sign, but like it's like when you sign a credit card contract and you just sign it, like all the terms are in there. You
Mhm.
just don't look at it. Well, when you're chat GTP, there's a clear disclaimer if you read it that your information at that point is into the
Nobody
internet.
reads that stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody
Well,
reads
I'm
it.
telling you, you should
I
read or you should listen. Don't put stuff
or don't sign
don't
things.
put stuff on the internet. That's
Yes.
the rule. Unless
Right?
you're okay with it coming back.
I think that people just don't realize that. They think it's just their little personal bubble of the world and they can,
Yeah.
nobody's looking over their shoulder, so it's
Yeah.
safe, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's not the case at all.
Yeah, that's a hot topic with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
bet.
think well, because I think the internet and social media has really and I like, there are things about social media I like. I have
Mhm.
Facebook, for example, which
Mhm.
makes me old, my kids say, but and I love seeing I went to college with people that are all over the country, and I love seeing people's kids and their pictures and
Mhm.
all that, but I do believe that social media has changed the way our society operates,
100%.
and I see that in my work all the time.
Mhm.
Um in different ways. I think it's challenged the way children navigate the world. I think it's impaired their ability to socialize to the same level. I think
Mhm.
it's changed all of our attention spans in a bad way. I mean, I think it's creates I think the divorce rate also went up because of it. It creates this dynamic of, oh, my high school boyfriend was so
Mhm.
hot. Oh my God, he's on Facebook. I wonder if I message him. And then next thing you know, like
Mhm.
full blown,
Mhm.
meeting up places. I mean, it happens all the time. These
Yeah.
are not like a one-time thing.
Yeah.
I can think
It's
of
not a
many.
movie plot, like, it
No, it's
actually happens.
not. And,
Yes.
maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I always say, like, it's gonna be Book of Eli one day,
Yes.
you know?
For
All
sure.
the computers are gonna everything's gonna crash. People are not even gonna
Mhm.
know what to do because who's reading books anymore? Um,
Mhm.
and we'll be back, and we'll circle back to books and records again, you know?
The pendulum will swing.
Yeah.
If you are if you are married
Mhm.
and own a business and you are business partners with your spouse,
Mhm.
your names are both of your names are on it, you work in the business together. Can you speak to that a little bit about how to structure those scenarios?
Well, that's interesting, but once you're in the business with your spouse, it's a marital asset.
Mhm.
And so the only thing that you can do really is to have a firm operating agreement. So if something happens, and then you should have some baseline contractual terms that you agree to.
Mhm.
And in those baseline terms, I always suggest that again, these are things you're thinking about that you probably don't want to think about, but I always recommend to my clients have a buyout provision
Mhm.
so that if it's just not working, you have the option of a buyout. I think that should be dealt with from the very beginning of the formation of a business. Um, because once you're married and you're operating a business together, it's double whammy because it's a marital asset because you're married.
Mhm.
And then it's on top of that, definitely a marital asset because you're both working for the business or giving something to the
Mhm.
business.
Mhm.
So I think you need to have some very clear contingencies when you're doing that with your spouse.
Mhm.
Um, I've never worked with my spouse, but I do have a lot of clients that do, and I would say that it's usually there are exceptions grounds for problems to
Right.
be always engaged with your spouse on every level of your life, business and
Yeah.
personal.
Well, business is complicated enough and marriage is complicated
Right,
enough, and then you compound that by
right, double whammy.
double whammy.
Now, I have some friends that, are in business together with their spouse and it's great.
Mhm.
Like marriage is good,
Mhm.
bad, otherwise, so it's not always the case. but it's kind of hard to beat the presumption in court if you're divorcing about a business that was operated by both the spouses.
Correct.
That falls right under what we call the equitable distribution. And in North Carolina, that is a default of 50-50.
Right.
Yeah,
For sure. So it's more complicated if you're like legally entwined with the business. But even so, if you're not, just making sure things are separate, clean, the books are clean,
absolutely.
you have an understanding and not just a verbal understanding, but
Written
written and signed
contracts.
a
Yeah.
contract about how you're going to approach things.
Hmm.
And it again, like it's hard to broach these subjects because it feels like it's going to come from a place of fear or planning to fail. And it's you have to look at it differently. You have to just kind of separate yourself from that, and it's hard because there is stigma attached to those kind of conversations.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. Most of those conversations are difficult no matter what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think when you're going into business with your spouse, that's probably a difficult conversation anyway. There might be
Hmm.
excitement to it,
Hmm.
but I mean, starting a business is stressful and hard.
Hmm. But totally worth it.
Absolutely.
Totally
Again,
worth it.
but I do think it can cause just issues in any relationship.
Mhm,
If you don't have the agreement, if you
mhm,
don't have a basic understanding, like a very basic understanding, and then specific terms that you already know to be true from the
mhm,
start, and then obviously as a business grows, sometimes we have to modify those contracts or change those contracts because we don't know how the business will grow or what it might, you know, go into another field as well,
mhm.
so you'd have to adjust that later.
Yeah. Before we jump back in, if you've been listening and you're curious about who helps make all this happen, go follow Podcast Rich on Instagram. You'll see exactly how all these episodes come together, plus tons of behind the scenes tips on content, podcasting, and storytelling. They're veteran owned, work with some massive creators, and genuinely care about helping people build something real. What does a healthy prenup or postnup conversation look like, in your opinion?
Well, I always for prenups, when people call me to consult on a prenup, one of the first things I ask them is, does has the other spouse already spoken to an attorney? Because sometimes it's best to just have a general information as to what a prenup is. And once I'm representing one person, then I cannot engage with the other person unless
Even
they're
in a prenup
well,
scenario?
I can if there's an understanding that they want
Mhm,
to speak, but I can only advise one person at a time once they've contracted with me. So I do tell folks it's sometimes easier from the start if you go and speak to a person together to hear
mhm,
what it means generally or what things are included, right? Um, and that is such a personality driven thing,
mhm.
Some people never want to talk to a lawyer, and I can't say I blame them, right? But um, that's one. I think I should have probably remember to get a list of books that I recommend, but there are a few books that I recommend that people, when they're trying to talk to their spouses about hard things, and how to do that.
Mhm,
For example, like I don't know that this would apply in a prenup or postnup situation, although I think it could. I always recommend that if you're concerned about the partner's reaction to the conversation, then that conversation should happen in a public place, like at a restaurant for dinner or lunch. And the reason why is people naturally are more attuned to their emotions in public, most people.
Yes.
And so it keeps the temperature down
Mhm,
sometimes, right? Like on discussing
mhm.
things. You can pretend that people don't yell when they get angry,
Mm.
but I think everyone who's ever been married at least one time has had an argument where they're yelling.
Absolutely.
And maybe they didn't intend to yell, but it's just human nature.
Mhm,
And so I think sometimes the public setting, the postnuptial, I think, is a easier topic because generally people don't want a postnuptial unless there's a reason, like a new reason that's happened. And
mhm.
usually that would be something like we're opening a business or there's an inheritance and that person wants to invest that inheritance but doesn't want the spouse to be involved in that, right? Because inheritance is separate property in North Carolina. But if you mingle it, it's
If you
marital.
invested and then that grows, then it's Got it.
marital.
Okay.
So, um, that's an easier conversation, I think, because at that point, I think the way you address it is to set up with a lawyer. I just
Mhm.
do. Like, I want to start a business. I think it's best for both of us that we go and sit down with somebody and let them talk to us about what a postnuptial will do. From the outset, I don't think it needs to be him versus her or her versus her, whatever the couple dynamic is.
Mhm.
I think it just needs to be here's the information for both of you and why this is beneficial to
Yes.
both of you.
So to have a third party kind of help steer that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And some of us, like family lawyers, we do what's called informal mediations. And that's when we're not representing one or the other, but we actually are the mediator. We sit down with the people to try and help them reach their terms. And that could be helpful in the prenup or postnup world too.
Is this something that would be best served with a business attorney or a family law attorney?
Postnuptial and prenuptial agreements should be done by a family attorney.
Okay.
Business contracts, operating agreements, contingency contracts, those are generally business attorneys.
Mhm.
Although for us, like I've been doing family law, there's a few of us that have been doing it forever.
Mhm.
We can do the business stuff too because it's come up so much in our work that we have continuing legal education. We have to do a
Mhm.
certain amount every year to make sure we're up to date. So sometimes it's a one-stop shop if you have a family law specialist is going to be able
Okay.
to. Obviously, if you're not married and you're just thinking about a business, then I would say go to a business attorney. And
Mhm.
I think even more, I hesitate to say this, but even more important than a business attorney is a good tax person.
Yes.
I really believe that
Mhm.
because so much of how a business operates, how from the very minute it's established to the way it operates, it's the reason that's important is how it feeds out in taxes, what
Yeah.
happens and how you deal with that from income versus expenses. Am I making
Oh,
sense?
yes.
I hope I'm
Yes.
not talking too much over people's heads or it's just like so many
Yeah.
issues tangential, you
Yeah.
know?
A tax attorney or a tax accountant?
I think an accountant more than a
Mhm.
tax attorney. Now, once you've established your business and if you're trying to look at how tax shelters, how to buy properties in the business, then you need a tax attorney.
Mhm.
But most tax attorneys are not doing the taxes
Right.
like your CPA is,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Um, I mean, I am so thankful that I have a CPA. For the first
Oh,
5
same.
years that I ran my business, I did
No,
everything.
that was one of the first things I did when I really
That's
didn't or
good.
couldn't afford it, but I knew that my weakness is numbers. I don't understand them. I knew I would get myself in trouble
Mhm.
real fast. And so that was an investment that I knew I had to make is to get a CPA
Yeah.
immediately. And then as my business grew, I moved to a different CPA who had a different skill set, knew
Right.
more about what I needed to
Right.
do, and it's been hugely beneficial. I wouldn't do it without her. Couldn't do it
Absolutely.
without her.
I feel the same about my CPA. I couldn't
Mhm.
do it without him. Never
Mhm.
will again,
Yeah.
ever. And you know what people don't realize, and this is a good thing to say, and is that the tax code is not built for us. It's not built for the average
Mhm.
American, lower income, middle class Americans. It is not built for the small business owners, which when
Mhm.
you say small business, you have to realize that any business that's generating under $3 million a year is considered a small business,
Mhm.
right? Because you can generate 3 million and have expenses of 1.5. So
Mhm.
it's not a big business. It's still a small business.
Right.
The tax code overwhelmingly is not for us. It's just not. It's
Yeah.
just a reality of the
Yep.
tax code. This isn't
Mhm.
politics. This isn't my personal opinion. If you took a few hours and you sat down and
This is
read
fact.
federal
Uh-huh.
tax code, it is fact.
Mhm.
And so I think one of the most important things in your life, if you are in a financial position or operating a business or earning better money than you ever had, is to talk to a tax. Don't use what are these online I forget all the
Tax
tax,
Act,
turbo tax, all
TurboTax,
this
Tax
stuff.
Act, you know.
I'm a big I'm a big believer in
Yeah.
no.
If you have a boss and you get a paycheck, you can use one of those things. If you
Yeah, and that's all you have.
Yes,
You
and
don't
that's
have
all you
more than
have.
one job,
Mhm.
you
Yep.
know. Mhm.
Mhm. It's so true, and I think every every category of business that costs you money, you should find somebody who's smarter than you
Absolutely.
to
You should
help
always
you.
surround yourself with people smarter than you. I
Yes.
never want to be the smartest person in a
No,
room.
half of my staff are smarter than me, like, the accountant is smarter than me, my attorney is for sure smarter than me, and, it's you can't know everything, you
Mhm.
can't do everything,
Mm.
nobody is smart in every
Everything,
category, and
yeah.
so finding help, will save you a massive amount of money and heartache
Later.
for the life of your business. I wanna reiterate because like, we kind of, like, glossed over it a little bit in the beginning, but if you start a business before you get married and then you get married, the growth of that business after you get married is considered marital
It
property.
can be.
Can be.
If you start the business before you get married and you keep
Mhm,
everything completely separate,
mhm,
everything,
mhm,
and it has to be everything, and I say everything like that because don't don't write off your spouse's car from the business because you can under taxes.
mhm,
Just keep the business 100% separate. Don't commingle. What happens sometimes, and these are understandable circumstances, right? Like I had a client a couple years ago, had a business, and what happened is the business got into some trouble and they took money from the marital assets to help get the
mm,
business out of
mhm,
trouble. Well, what is that? That is commingling. And
mhm.
once you've commingled, you've now created a marital asset to be divided.
Okay.
So in that case, for example, when we had the business evaluation, they had to attribute how much growth because they took this money from the marriage, put it
Mm,
in to help the business, and it did help the business, thankfully.
mhm,
And then the business grew. So is it just that portion of what was put into the business? Like you would a loan? Is it just the payback of the loan? Or is it the growth? And the way I think about it is, have you ever gotten a loan that didn't have something else besides just the money? Maybe if you borrow it from your grandma or your mom, you borrowed
mhm,
$500, you just pay them back $500. But if you
mhm.
go to the bank and you get a loan, are you paying back $500? No, you're going
No.
to pay back whatever percentage they've attributed.
Mhm.
Well, the same could be true of a business. If you've taken from the marriage and put into the business, are you just going to get back what the marriage put in? No.
Yeah.
There's
So does
some
the court look at that like, would they look at that as like the,
divisible.
$10,000 plus whatever the average interest rate is compounded over however many years it's been? Is that how they look at it, or do they look at how much the business grew because of that amount?
Yeah, they would look at the business growth, but it would be the court would be looking at a report from a business professional.
Mhm,
So there are professionals that we hire to do these business
mhm.
valuations that we put on the stand to testify. I hope you didn't have to go through any of that, but
No, I didn't.
good.
Mm.
Good. But they will testify. And so they'll basically like when I get my business, it'll tell me this is how much the business grew because of that. And this is what's marital and this is what's separate. Like the
Mhm,
report will actually, it's all math. It's done very specifically
mhm.
in terms of math. Um, so the cleanest thing is if you start a business before you're married, that's separate property. Don't make any of that business marital. Don't use any marital assets. Don't do anything that's going to impede. If you pay your cell phone and your car out of your business, and that's what you've always done, and
Mhm,
that's permissible, of course, under taxes,
mhm.
um, you can keep doing that. But then don't start, because the business is doing well, don't start paying all your personal expenses out of the business.
That's so hard. It's such a tempting
I know.
thing to do because it's a benefit of owning your
I get it.
business, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to, and I don't think I didn't know that. I didn't know
Yeah.
that would weigh into it, that
Yeah.
if I paid for my spouse's car insurance and his cell phone bill,
Yeah.
that would weigh into that.
Yeah. Well, I always tell my husband if we get divorced, which we're not, because, we're
Mhm.
not, but, and I'm a divorce lawyer, but if we did, I mean, I would owe him
Mhm.
alimony. He would have half of the business. I mean, everything we've built, because that is the notion, right? The
Mhm.
ideal of marriage is really a contract. It's really, people get offended when I say that, but think about it. Uh, the government had to have their part in it.
Yes.
That's why you pay to get a marriage license
Mhm.
and you have to pay to get a divorce certificate.
Mhm.
The benefit of getting married is it's supposed to be a partnership. And so what you reap, I reap. It's a reciprocal. And so we think about it like that. And so the notion would be that as you grow as a partnership and a couple, everything that you acquire is supposed to be both of yours.
Mhm.
What we know now, or just as adults, or just navigating the world, or just knowing the divorce rates and human relations, right? Like the concept of the marriage, it's just not It's not 100% true
Mhm.
because you could be partners for a period of time and share everything equally. And then it could happen that one person is just doing all the work and making going out on a limb and starting a business or taking a
Mhm.
career path. And that's a hard shift, right? And so the notion that no matter what one person does, it's always going to be 50-50, it's always going to be a
Mhm.
marriage. That's
Mhm.
a hard pill to swallow, I think, for most
Mhm.
people. Um, Especially if you're the one that um has to pay for the other spouse if you're not married anymore, right? Like
Mhm.
that's a hard pill, but I think it's really it's almost like this whole thing of rethinking how we frame relationships in general
Mhm.
too. I mean, I have older daughters, and none of them are married. Um, but I've always been the person, when I was raised Catholic, you mentioned that recently, like, you didn't get a divorce, you didn't live with people,
Mhm.
no premarital sex. Well, I'm not ignorant,
Mhm.
okay? So, my
Mhm.
girls got them on birth control, and I always said to them, "Please live with someone. If you think this is the person you love, and you think this is the person you wanna be with forever, and you want them to have half of everything that you ever do or make in your life, you need to live with them before you get married. I don't care what people say."
Mhm.
You know, I think it's a learning experience. Live with the person before. You would be
Yeah.
surprised at how
There
many
is
people.
there's no way to know about a person until you live with
No,
them.
I
You
don't.
you
That's
really
my
can't.
opinion.
That's been my experience
Okay, so
for
there you go.
sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird to grow up and have a belief system which I still have,
Mhm.
and then reconcile that with like actual reality and
Right.
logistics.
Right.
And we are forced to think about logistics when what should be a spiritual and emotional relationship, partnership, and yet we have to think about all
Mhm.
the other things.
Mhm.
And that's sad, but it's
Mhm.
reality. And
Yeah.
so, um, I think it's just so important for people to have the information, to know what they're getting into, to be prepared. And again, like a prenup doesn't have to mean this is my business. You don't get
Right.
any of it. It's
Right.
really about right now when you love each other and you're committing your life to each other. Let's have a conversation about what this means, what this legal partnership is. Which is separate from your spiritual
Right.
partnership. It
Right.
is,
Right.
but it's part of life.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the common intersection that always fascinates me between personal life and the law and public life and what regulates.
Mhm.
And a relationship is really your personal life.
Mhm.
And it's really about behind closed doors. It's really about, like you said, the emotional, spiritual, mental connections
Mhm.
that you have with another person. But it's regulated
Mhm.
by the law and the government. And that's a complicated thing,
It is.
And it's obviously been around for, the institution of marriage for as long as we
Mhm.
can note on books.
Mhm.
Um, but again, without sounding too cynical. And I've been happily married for a very long time, and I'm a big advocate of marriage. And one of the
Mhm.
first things I say to any person that comes in my office, I say, are you done in your mind and your heart? Because your heart and your mind are two different things.
Correct.
And you can be done in an emotion in a relationship emotionally in your heart, but mentally not be there. Or you can mentally know this isn't working for me. This is a bad, but I'm so in love or I'm so moved or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Your heart and your mind have to be aligned. And I ask that to every person that comes in my office. Is your heart and your mind aligned? Because if it's not, then you shouldn't be seeing me yet because you
Mhm.
have to figure those things out. Well, when you're in a relationship and you're requiring, you're wanting it to be about your heart, your emotion,
Mhm.
but you have to remember
Mm.
that your mind has to function there too. And you have to think about things that you might not want to think about.
Mhm.
What if, what if,
Mhm.
what if, what if?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't want to think about dying, but I have insurance
Correct.
for if I pass away.
Yep.
How are they going to afford to keep everything going,
Mhm. You
Uh,
don't make a plan for that life transition and you leave your family to deal with. I mean,
right,
so it is a plan. That's all it is. It's a plan.
right.
It's a uh grown-up thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's sad that the institution of marriage has gotten so complicated because the government's involved,
Right.
but
And
it's
the
reality.
law.
And
Mhm.
the law is
Mhm.
involved, and it's just part of it.
Mhm.
Do you feel in your experience, well, I know that you this is the way it is, but I'm curious to know your perspective on how men and women approach these conversations differently.
Oof. Yeah, that's a whole topic.
Yeah.
So, what's interesting for me, which maybe, yes, men and women approach it very differently. I
Mhm.
find that men can be much more matter of fact about things, um, generally. However, I'm of the age that I've seen, in my opinion, a tremendous, what I feel is more women in business. Okay. So,
Mhm.
for example, when I started practicing law, I was one of very few female attorneys around. And now, as the years have gone on, and so I think that has changed. So, I think women are much more, they're able to be matter of fact, very business, because now, I mean, people don't realize the history, but women really have not existed to the same level legally, financially, and in business
Correct.
because they've not been allowed to, right? Like we're
Mhm.
talking 1919 and stuff,
Recent
right? Right?
history.
So,
Yes.
um, so I find in the recent years, the younger women are much more empowered and matter of
Mhm.
fact about it. Um, So that I used to feel like women could be more emotional about the conversations, but I don't feel that way anymore, and that's a change
Mhm.
for me. In fact, I find in the recent years that men are more emotional about it, and that could be attributable to the statistics of now we're a nation of there are actually more breadwinning women than there are men, which is very new,
Mhm.
very new. Um, and that's a different sin dynamic too, right? Like you have,
So you're saying so men are now more dependent on women
yeah,
than they used to be, and
yes,
so then that becomes an
more emotional.
emotional
Yeah.
attachment because I need you
Mhm.
to survive.
Yes.
Not just it's nice to have you around and let's get
Yeah.
in bed. It's a need. It's a
Yeah.
logistical need.
Yeah. It's just, yeah. It's always been fascinating, and I've seen it ebb and flow. Like, for example, the claim of alimony, right? Which is support that a spouse is supposed to get when one spouse has been the breadwinner and the other has been supporting. And this notion, without a long history lesson, this came because historically women were homemakers
Mhm.
because that's what they were told to do and allowed to do, right? So women made the home and they had kids and they raised the kids and the men went to work and they
Mhm.
made the money. And so alimony came because what was happening is men were leaving the women that had made the home and children and going off in the sunset, and these poor women that never had school education,
Mhm.
which I still have clients like that. They spent their whole lives married, doing the best they could to be a good wife and a homemaker and raise the kids,
Mhm.
and then they have nothing. So alimony came from that, the notion that, well, no, we got to fix this.
Right.
So there's a support coming in. Well, what we see now is we see way more men having claims for support, which is interesting
Mhm.
because the claim, I think, historically was to get women on more like level footing, right, with
Mhm.
men. Well, now we're in a society where I wouldn't say we're 100% equal, but I would certainly say that women have made significant strides in business. And so you have,
Mhm.
you know, men that are having claims for alimony now. And I always find that um
So interesting.
fascinating. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there aren't. Like there are certainly men that have given up and been the homemaker and raised their kids. I mean, my husband right now, at this point in our life, we have a lot of kids, but our youngest kid is only 13. It's our only boy. At that point in our life, he stayed home and gave up his job to be
Mhm.
home and do the things. Um, and so, there would be an entitlement there, I think. But
Yes.
at the same time, it's shifted so much even emotionally, right?
Mhm.
Like there is some, I don't know how hip, but there is some in the field and in the world of like, well, I mean, a man shouldn't be getting support from, shouldn't get alimony. That's not what it was created.
Is that you mean it like in the legal realm people are saying
Sometimes,
that?
yeah, or even in the communities.
Do
Yeah.
you feel like men, if when they find themselves in that situation that they refuse it because
No.
they welcome it
I
because
mean, there's
they
obviously been some situations in which I'm a man and
uh-huh,
I'll sink or swim on my own.
uh-huh.
And there are some women, in fairness, that are like, I just want to be done.
Right.
Like, you could have
I can
everything,
understand
right?
that.
Like, freedom is peace. It's a personal thing. But I
Uh-huh.
certainly think that in the last 5 years, and I did some statistics on files, I've seen more men that have had claims than I ever had previous
Mhm.
because women are just, which is great, like
Mhm.
in the workforce doing more
Mhm.
businesses and things like that. But it's changed, circling back to your original question, it's changed the way, like, emotionally I can decide to deal with someone, whether they're a man or a woman. I don't think I can do that anymore at
Yeah,
all.
because it's more kind of level
Like,
playing
yeah,
field
and it's,
almost.
like, just situational, like,
Yeah.
I've had a lot of, if you've told me 20 years ago when I started, like, how many stay-at-home dads I would see, I would never have believed that. I really wouldn't,
Mhm.
just because I was raised a little bit, I was raised Catholic, a little bit machismo culture, which is, the man did certain things and the woman did certain things.
Mhm.
Obviously, I'm a very progressive, independent woman, but the world and what's in the world can factor into that too. And I just find
Mhm.
it's very hard for me to know whether, just because someone's a man or a woman,
Yeah.
how it's going to play out.
That is so interesting to me.
It's fascinating to
I
me.
bet.
I've been actually writing, sometimes I write articles for law reviews, which nobody cares about. They're just nerd books that lawyers read. But
Mhm.
I I wrote one a few years ago, which I called "Conjugal Visits Only," where I argue that separate bedrooms is very important for a successful marriage at a certain point. Okay, which is a very
Mhm.
controversial topic at the time. Well, now I don't know if you pay attention to this, but like all kinds of celebrities have come out
Oh,
saying
yeah.
that that's how they've stayed married this
Yeah,
long.
I
That their sleep,
believe
yeah, I'm a
that.
believer. We're believers in it.
Yeah.
I always laugh with my friends. We say we have our relationship is great. I need my own bedroom. I need to sleep. My husband I need dark, quiet, the
Yes.
end. He likes his TV and his radio. And after my last child, I said, you know what? It's all good. We can have visitations.
Yes. For
But um, but the newer article I'm writing on, and I haven't decided what to call it or what, if I'm gonna follow through with it, but it's about the changing dynamics of the emotional world between men and women and what it has done, what the progress of women in business and in the world has done to the emotional relationship between men and women. Um, and it is somewhat not necessarily gender exclusive either, because it's really about how the factors of breadwinner and supporting have
right.
changed and what that does in a relationship. Because what you do have is a lot of men that I've seen that are emasculated by the fact that their female counterpart is the one that's making the money or doing the things, right?
Mhm.
But then you also have women that are very unsatisfied and they don't realize why on someone, because they feel like their spouse is not making enough money or they're the ones carrying the burden.
Mhm.
And I've seen that manifest in guilt in a lot of women, whereas like they're like, I'm so progressive, this shouldn't matter. Like, I don't care who makes the money. But then I get home and like the dishes are in the sink and I'm still
Mm.
picking up the kids and I'm still doing all the things that traditionally a woman did
Yes.
and the things that traditionally a man did, but yet the husband or the counterpart is not evolving.
Mhm.
I mean,
It
it's
is
a fascinating
fascinating.
cross between psychology and law, really.
It probably is takes a little bit for everybody to catch up. So, like,
Yeah.
all of these changes have happened,
Mhm.
and yet our emotional selves aren't as quick to change
Mhm.
as other things are, and so we're lagging a little bit in the
Yeah.
emotional, um, maturity to be able to handle what the world really is like now.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
interesting.
And I'm not like proud to say this. And of course I'm older and I'm mature and we do the best we can until we know better and then we do better, right? But like when
Mhm.
I first used to have clients come in, I hadn't met them before. If it was a man, I had a certain approach. And if it was a woman, I had a certain approach. And like I said, I'm older and wiser and better now. But
Mhm.
I have no preconceived notions when I meet with someone now. Like
Mhm.
their gender, sex, whatever, it is irrelevant because the factors of the world have changed being able
So much. Yeah.
to to put those stereotypes in play, if that makes any
Uh-huh.
sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's fascinating.
Oh, I think so too. But I'm a nerd all day. All day. I wanna know the whys of
Yeah.
everything
Why is everything so
and
different? And
how do we adjust to that?
yeah,
Because we've also got, declining marriage rates, declining birth rates. Tell me that's not related.
for sure.
It's gotta be all related.
Mhm.
Why now,
Mhm.
So
How do you as a family law attorney who deals with so many divorces, how do you protect yourself and your thoughts towards marriage and relationships when you see so much, and this is kind of off topic, but I'm just so
it's okay, I think we've
interested,
been
but,
a
like,
couple places.
yeah, how do you protect your own viewpoints about relationships and marriage when you see so many fail?
Mhm. Well, I have a very strong faith. I don't know if I
Mhm.
wear this every day to remind me.
Mhm.
I always joke about it. They joke about it in court when I really like want to punch somebody in the face.
With the cross.
I look down and say, "Oh no, I can't do that because my cross right here. God's watching." But I think relationships are so personal. I think that's another issue about social media that I hate, right? Like
Mhm.
comparison is what do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy or
Yeah.
some expression
Mhm.
like that. I think that's so true in relationships because each relationship has to be built on a foundation, in my opinion, of trust and communication. Those are the for a friendship, for a marriage, for any relationship. And I try to just keep my relationship separate because what works for
Mhm.
me might not work for everybody else. And what I
Mhm.
see, I pay no mind to. Now, like I said about the bedrooms, I mean, a lot of people would not admit that, or they for years people thought that was weird or make a face, but
Mhm.
like that works for us, and we're still married, and we're happily
Mhm.
married. So whatever works for people works for them. This the comparison, I think, is what causes a lot of problems. I mean, we in the family law industry always say we have PTSD every day from other people's and I do, and I'm a terrible at boundaries. My clients have my cell phone. I'm very
Mhm.
invested. I'm a very emotional person. I'm probably a terrible like all the rules of what you're supposed to do as a lawyer. I break those rules,
I'm
okay?
sure.
But
You're kinda forced into becoming a therapist
yeah,
too.
but it says attorney counselor at law when
That's
they gave us that,
true.
so
That's
I always
true.
make that joke, but yeah, I mean, and so I think I just always think of my relationship in a box, in a vacuum. Like this is what works for us. This is what is important to me. This is what's important
Mhm.
to him. And we work on that. And then we have God for us that's important in our relationship. Like what we believe we need to do towards each other
Mhm.
is grounded in faith. And that's not
Mhm.
necessary for everyone, but
Mhm.
that's what works. What I do and it does make me more grateful. Like, there are days I come home and I can't talk about my work with my husband, but there are days I come home like, "Babe, I just love you so much." He's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you must have had a bad day." It's like, "Yes," because I see so many things, but
Mhm.
I think there are 3 things for any relationship, and I said one of these earlier, like communication.
Mhm.
You should not engage in a long-term relationship if you cannot communicate about absolute and I mean, like, absolutely anything, Abby, like, anything. Like, the worst thing that you don't wanna talk about with anyone, you
Mhm.
should be able to do that with your partner, not your best friend, not your
Mhm.
mama, although if you can do those things, that's
Yeah.
great too, but your spouse, and people don't they don't do that. They hide the amount of stuff that people hide from their spouses is insane to me. And that just creates issues later. So
Mhm.
communication. The second thing is knowing that people grow and people change and you're either going to help that growth and encourage that growth and be uplifting about that growth or you're going to be stagnant or discouraging, right? Cuz you could be encouraging, you could be discouraging, you can also be stagnant.
Mhm.
And stagnant and discouragement can be the same thing, really. And when you decide to get in a relationship, you have to know this person is not going to be this. You're always like, they're not the person I married, or they're not the
Mhm.
person. Yeah, if they were being honest, okay. Now, if they weren't being honest, that's not your fault. But if
Right.
they were, growth happens, and we're supposed to be each other's cheerleaders.
Mhm.
And there's so many couples that don't do that. Like there's jealousy, there's envy, there's resentment, all normal feelings that you can
Mhm.
have occasionally
Mm.
Certainly, right? Like,
Mhm.
I get resentment at times if I come home and I'm OCD and my husband's not, you know? So if I come home and things are, I'm like, ugh,
Uh-huh.
but that's normal. What
Right.
I'm talking about is like a persistent pattern where like you're trying to grow. Let's say you're trying to open a business and your spouse is like, no, that's terrible. You won't have time to do this. That is a red flag. That is a red flag. That means that someone is not willing to grow with you. So, what's going to happen if, God forbid, you lose the ability to see when you're older or walk? How
Mhm.
will they treat you? You can see that earlier in life. So, are they going to grow with you? And the third thing is that love and passion are two different things.
True.
When we first get married, it's we passionate too.
Passion.
We're in love. We
Mhm.
want to kiss. We want to hold hands. We don't care
Mhm.
about public displays of affection. Awesome.
Mhm.
And any relationship, no matter what people tell you, because I've been doing this a very long time. I did this before I practiced law. I also worked in law firms, right? Any relationship is gonna dip and dive like a roller coaster ride. You'll have some periods where that passion is just not there.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean it's dead. It could be, but it means that you have to rely on the love and the foundation and force feed that back, right? You have to
Mhm.
work on that. And in some cases, you can't. In
Mhm.
some cases, it's just done for other reasons. Somebody's lied to you, or, there's all kinds of reasons that cause people to separate or divorce. It's not just infidelity, it's not just money.
Mhm.
There are lots of things.
Mhm.
Mental health. People don't realize, most mental health issues can appear in late 20s to 30s. And so sometimes people marry somebody and
After
they
you're already
are
married.
really like a
Uh-huh.
completely different person.
Right.
So that's a different category. But, you know, knowing that love and passion are two different things. And when you see that that passion is gone, it's both people's responsibility to try to reignite that again. Date. I tell people all the time, date your spouse.
Yes.
Go on dates with your spouse. Do
Mhm.
things with your spouse. I also tell people all the time, you need a life. You and your partner are not one person. You
Mhm.
are a partnership. You are a person with needs. You are a person with interests and hobbies. They are too. And those should not be all the same
The same
things.
thing.
It's great if you have things in common. Absolutely. Like, I love going to see stuff with my husband, but if there's something that I like that he does not like, does that mean I'm not going? No.
No.
I'll go by myself or I'll find a
Right.
friend. But you know how many of my people I affiliate, like friendships, they like are either do stuff with their spouse or don't do it. And it's like,
Mhm.
we're grown ass people. Like,
Yeah, you can
you
have
can be
separate.
your own person
Mhm.
and still have that love and
Mhm.
passion. So those are the three things that I always say. And I try to constantly take inventory of that in my own life. Cause of course, I fail sometimes, I'll snap sometimes, or I'll be like feeling ignored or whatever. And I just
Mhm.
have to remind myself, like, snap back into it.
Mhm.
It's kind of, I forgot that song, but there's a song where it's like, I fell in love every day or every other day. Alan Stone, I think, is I'll have to send it to you
Yeah.
later, but basically, like, you can fall in love with the same person over and over and over again, you know?
Mhm.
Some days you might not feel it, but that doesn't mean it's quitting time. That's
Yeah,
my opinion.
for sure.
And it,
That's
and
the
those
human
three
experience.
things.
Yeah.
So all those things.
I wonder what the statistics are for the divorce rate, for divorce attorneys, because I feel like you are in a constant lab
Mhm.
where you see what works and what doesn't work,
Mhm.
and have the opportunity to make sure that those
Mhm.
the things that don't work
Mhm.
aren't a part of
Mhm.
your life. I would be
So
curious.
here's an interesting fact though. So there's about 10 of us in New Hanover that do pretty much the majority of the cases, and
Mhm.
you probably know their names. And and of the 10 of us, 8 of us are married and have been married very like 20 plus years, and 2 are divorced. So, and then
Mhm.
there's one who is divorced and perpetually single. So I guess he would be an outlier. So
Mhm.
11, so 8 to 3. So yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I've never studied that.
In
Like,
that little microcosm, the
yes,
statistics are better
interesting.
than the
Yeah,
general
yeah,
populace.
yeah. But the knowledge, like, this wouldn't. This would not be a decision maker for me. Like, if we were to divorce financially, it would hurt us, but it would hurt me, not us really,
Mhm.
because it would hurt me financially.
Mhm.
Um, and so I wonder sometimes if the finances are a big reason, particularly for professionals. like the lawyers that work in it, the business evaluators,
Mhm.
the forensic accountants, because they see and know what happens financially, like that old expression, cheaper to keep her. I don't like it,
Mhm.
but I do think a fair amount of people do make decisions, and maybe they, again, I don't want to be dismissive. There are people that really cannot afford
Mhm.
to separate at
Yeah.
times.
Well, I think the more informed you are about what the decision means in its totality,
Mhm.
can I mean, it can do 2 things. It can keep you in a situation you shouldn't stay in because you're afraid,
Right.
but it can also wake you up to say, "Okay, is this thing can we work this out? Can we get better?
Sure.
Can we do put the work in because the alternative is terrifying."
Mhm. No, I
So,
think you're absolutely 100% right, and I try not to do anything in my life fear driven, although I
mhm.
experience fear.
Uh-huh.
I just try really hard to choose faith over fear every
Mhm.
day of my life. Don't always do that. And I think people um, sometimes have to weigh that in a different way. Like you
Mhm.
said, like sometimes it can be, sometimes being broken all the way down to the foundation could be the best thing to build a relationship back up, you know? And I've seen all kind of things. I always like to tell people I've divorced the same couple 3 times. So I've seen it all. I've
Yes.
seen full blown affairs leave relationships better than they were, which nobody ever wants to talk about that.
Mhm.
How a full blown affair can actually force the other spouse to the table. And this is not in all circumstances, okay? I'm
Right.
not encouraging infidelity. I think
Right.
it's terrible. But what the real issue was never communicated about or
Mhm.
addressed, and until that happened, that broke everything apart, that's when the real communication came, and from that, they could build a new foundation. Like, I
Mhm.
have seen this in my work. Not always, but I have seen that. And I'm a believer in that. I'm a believer that sometimes we have to be broken all the way down to build ourselves back up to where we're supposed to be or where we're meant to be.
Mhm.
And I always like to say things are chapters, life is chapters. A divorce is not a failure, it is a chapter in your life. Like most things, if you're still standing, then you're not a failure. You've been through 100% things. Hey, maybe things did not go the way that you wanted them to. My life
Mhm.
certainly didn't go the way I thought it was going to go or how I expected it to go.
Mhm.
That is not failure. That's just you moving into the plan of what you're supposed to do or be.
That's so
Um,
good.
yeah, I mean, I try. Life is hard, man. Life is hard for everyone.
Mhm.
People are doing things like dealing with things I could not imagine. And
Yeah.
life's not easy for, everybody's got
Yeah.
stuff every day.
Yeah.
And so,
And life is so complicated. It just is. Our the way we have structured our lives and society is complicated. So I
yes.
think it's a mixture of faith over fear, which I am a firm believer in as well. I think that's the way to live, faith over fear.
Me too. Amen.
Um, and and almost on equal footing with that is just be educated, know what's happening,
Mhm.
understand
Mhm.
what you're getting into,
Mhm.
and how to organize your life in a way where it takes some of the fear out,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
Because fear is a monster and
Absolutely.
fear is a liar and it will
Absolutely.
tell you
That's
all
the
kinds
job
of
of fear.
yes,
Yeah.
it will talk you into all kinds of shenanigans. And so
Yes.
if you can organize your life in a way that like lessens the fear a little bit,
Right.
I think is part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation because it's about eliminating a big category of fear in a business owner's life, in a woman's life, in a
Yes.
human's life, right? The
Yes.
unknown.
Yeah.
Like if I do this, it's going to make everything fall
Right.
into a pit. Um,
But you can't be afraid to ask
you're
questions,
right.
and you can't be afraid to go to somebody smarter than you.
Yes.
We all have crafts that we hone. We all have
Mhm.
skills. Not everyone has all the same skills.
Mhm.
Like beat the fear back by going to somebody that knows better.
By
You
getting
know?
information.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. You wanna start a business, you don't know where to start?
Yep.
That's okay. You ask people,
Mhm.
You I think it's we're supposed to share information and we're
Absolutely.
supposed to walk in our craft, you
Mhm.
know? I'm not trying to be, the accountant. I'm not trying to be the psychologist. I'm
Mhm.
trying to do the best that I can as the lawyer, like
Mhm.
hone my craft, stay educated. I think that's what everybody should do. And
Yeah.
when I need advice on things that is not my craft,
Yeah.
I go to those people.
Yeah, for sure. Growing up in the church that I grew up in, my parents were pastors, and
Hmm.
my dad, would always teach about the and this is not a faith-based podcast, however, it informs my life in a
Sure.
great way, but everybody has their gifts, and the body of Christ is not everybody can't be hand, and everybody can't be a nose, and everybody can't be an earlobe, and,
Hmm.
everybody has their place and their gift to give to the world, and, so we need to utilize all of the people around us that know more than we do, that can help us avoid the potholes,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
The absolute holes that open up in the earth and swallow us,
Yeah,
by being prepared as much as we can lessen that fear a little bit and live more in
absolutely.
faith.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm Christian, so I'm
mhm,
very big, like my faith is important to me, but of course I don't push that on other people. But I do think like beating back fear with faith doesn't have to even be faith in God. It could
mhm,
just be internal faith in yourself.
mhm,
And like knowing that sometimes in life you just take some risks.
yeah,
Sometimes in life you need to ask questions to other people.
yeah,
You're not the smartest person in the room. If you are the smartest person in the room that you're always in, it's time for you to make some
yeah.
friends or
You're
go
in the
some new
wrong room.
places.
Mhm,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
This has been so helpful for
I
me.
hope so. I hope I answered your
Oh, you
questions.
did. That was amazing. I think it's such an important conversation and a scary one to have, but I think it's important for people to know it and learn and prepare and grow and put themselves in as good of a position as they can to be successful, to be peaceful, to live a good life. And so I really appreciate your wisdom and your time.
Thanks
And
for asking me to.
yeah. Thanks for joining me on Business from Scratch. Follow the show for more honest conversations about building a business that works for you.